the Black Sabbath lead singer Ozzy Osbourne has died at the age of 76.
At the age of 76, Ozzy Osbourne, the main singer for the Black Sabbath, passed away. This was a lifelong secret that Ozzy Osbourne just shared in the final days of his life. All of this was documented in confidential documents that were signed by him and stored internally. This was a conscious choice, not a media accident. His family, his profession, his standing, and the sacrifices he made. A final inventory was created by compiling them all. He had steered clear of sorting things out item by item, mistakes by mistakes, and actions by actions. During his last days, Ozzy Osbourne left behind a number of significant details that fundamentally altered his perception of himself and his professional path. Together with the text messages he composed while in the hospital, the recordings of his private discussions with his family and close friends provide the most complete picture of the past he had previously shunned. The statement, "I let another version of myself live for me," stood out among the others. That individual lacked morality and boundaries, and I spent too much time in his shadow. No prior memoirs or interviews contained this sentence. The family's attorney currently has a handwritten copy of the document in a personal notebook. With strongly affirmative wording, Ozzy Osbourne's recorded content clearly shows his self-evaluation and life summary. He acknowledged in a well-written and cohesive section that it is not worth my family's trust or my mental well-being to show up without pay. I believed I was untouchable, therefore I accepted everything. The final summary he signed 2 weeks before to his death included a quote from the memo, which was part of an internally verified document. "I am not under the control of any force," Ozzy Osbourne said in an over 30-minute audio recording made by his management while he was in critical condition. "It is my fault that everything got out of hand. I am the one responsible for setting up the worst scenario. I then place the blame on the situation." The statement's substance is entirely in line with the handwritten notes, which are confirmed by the legal signature and handwriting. The organizers of his final show at Villa Park and his legal counsel had received copies of the audio recording. He went on to detail instances in the same letter where he lost control over his actions, such as drug usage, strained familial connections, and incidents that he felt violated any minimal moral standards. He claimed in one section that the undated entry was stored in a private document called the end-of-life account. He also made a brief message on the back of a handwritten letter to his kid, which is another noteworthy paragraph. It was discovered that the note was penned in his left hand while Ozzy Osbourne's mobility was restricted as a result of his medical treatment. This quote's inclusion in post-production footage, together with other self-critical remarks, demonstrates how strongly he desired to create a legacy that encapsulated his own moral principles. In addition to the written and audio documents, there is a 12-minute internal videotape of Ozzy Osbourne speaking with a former management team member. "Don't want to recreate my image," he says at the start of the conversation. "All I want to leave is a genuine replica of who I have become." Not the character that was portrayed in the advertisements. A posthumous memorial file has been created using the audio-edited tape as the foundation for independent proof. Completed around the time of his last performance, these documents demonstrate the relationship between his choice to stop all public activities and his personal reckoning. The official document and the internal statement were released at different times, indicating a deliberate attempt to distinguish between Ozzy Osbourne's public character and his true self. What this collection of personal details confirms is not restricted to particular behaviors, but rather an acknowledgement of the complete way of thinking that has guided his life for many years. Without any embellishment, avoidance, or opportunity for justifications, the final portrait is finished in this candor. Within the family relationship category, Ozzy Osbourne enumerated transgressions of his duty to close relatives, such as continuing to have long-term extramarital affairs, inviting outsiders into the family's private residences, and exploiting family assets for his own benefit without the wife and kids' permission. He said that by prioritizing his personal goals over his basic responsibilities as a member, he had destroyed trust in the family unit. The summary contained no information that blamed events, circumstances, or other parties. The main themes of the family evaluation were ongoing carelessness and personal guilt. In his professional life, Ozzy Osbourne drew a clear line between the realm of genuine artistic endeavors and the realm of commercial service. He produced a status report that included an examination of how performances were received, despite having a strict timetable and physicians' warnings about potential long-term neurological damage. Furthermore, he documented instances in which he misdirected event planning, resulting in conditions where technical requirements were not fulfilled or that had significant financial repercussions. These choices, in his opinion, were the most obvious indication of the stage at which professional standards are lost. They also provided hard proof that it is detrimental to continue artistic endeavors beyond the physical threshold. Ozzy Osbourne explicitly examined in the consequences system the pervasive effects of individual acts on the collective brand, particularly on his longtime partners. A portion of the material demonstrates that the artist was well aware that the distorted representation of his own image hurt the related party's business reputation. I have brought many individuals into the ramifications of poor choices for which I alone should be held accountable, he stated in a clear note. This keeps happening. In order to prevent overshadowing the group's accomplishments, these records not only detail the events, but also offer recommendations for dividing up the responsibilities between him and his partners. Financial structure and asset commitments were among the topics he covered with a great deal of urgency. Budget overspending, using performance money for uses beyond the contract's parameters, and violations of personal accounting principles were all succinctly outlined by Ozzy Osbourne. As to his own analysis, his internal control system was unable to function during this time due to its reliance on impromptu choices and lack of risk assessment. One passage in particular talked about utilizing the name of a business with multi-party liability to make personal financial decisions. This resulted in an imbalance of power, which sparked a number of protracted business conflicts. In order to accurately depict the extent of harm to human resources, finances, and reputation, this section's content mostly describes the process of systemic collapse without offering any kind of defense. The symptoms of aberrant behavior are quantifiable and come with particular repercussions. The perspectives of internal comparison and societal responsibility are evident in the arrangement of each piece of material, which goes from the personal level to the level of community influence. Last choice. Based on a final internal concept, the final musical event was created with Ozzy Osbourne personally approving the participants and the screenplay framework. To end all public performances, the primary goal was to create a single program that was conducted under strict control. In the draft program, the number of guests, the number of performances, the operation route, the technical coordination, and the extent of the party's commercial interest were all clearly defined. The linked paper also stated that photos from this program could not be used for any kind of future recommercialization, including archives or films. This clause was put in place to guarantee the event's successful finish and prevent further use of the photographs for purposes other than their intended artistic intent. Another item that is explicitly included in the personal document system is the choice to reject any performance contracts that are currently being negotiated or in force. In a specific document given to organizers' representatives in Europe, North America, and South America, Ozzy Osbourne ruled off the possibility of participating in festivals, tours, or extensive collaboration initiatives. The validity of the complete system of international between the image reservation time and the active period. Regarding copyright and cultural property, Ozzy Osbourne has created a transfer of ownership rights for his portfolio of personal works, which includes unreleased recordings and unfinished compositions. An intermediary organization appointed by him will oversee the rights of commercial exploitation and subsequent reproduction in the legal documents drafted with the intellectual property, counsel's assistance. The organization's primary responsibility will be to preserve artistic value and refrain from modifying content for short-term financial gain. In order to make future evaluations of archival value easier, the copyright regime is clearly organized by grouping works according to their level of completeness and primary inspiration during the creative period. Apart from the content pertaining to the assets, Ozzy Osbourne also incorporated the usage of the last show as a symbolic endpoint into the strategic decision document. The show's entire earnings were to be donated to a long-term foundation for study and medical treatment of elderly people suffering from degenerative neurological illnesses. In line with the values of openness and the public interest, this choice was made as a means of guaranteeing the ongoing social impact. Each expenditure item in the attached budget allocation plan is distinguished by the name of the organization that will be supported, the mode of payment, and the execution date. The entirety of this part demonstrates a scientifically sound administrative behavior system that is completely structured and devoid of legal loopholes. Documents supporting each decision are included. The objectives are precise, quantifiable, and unambiguous, preventing any opportunity for subjective interpretation. With a thorough system of administrative paperwork guaranteeing the validity and regulated transfer of his whole artistic heritage, Ozzy Osbourne concluded the process of ending his career. The spirit endures as the body deteriorates. Motor impairment, brain damage, and chronic musculoskeletal diseases were the main causes of Ozzy Osbourne's physical condition in the latter stages of his life, according to internal medical data that his staff kept and validated. The recorded symptoms point to a gradual impairment that impacts his capacity to carry out professional activities in the music industry and maintain an independent personal life. However, there is no indication in the documents that he has any cognitive or strategic decision-making impairments. Ozzy Osbourne's neurological issue is exacerbated by previous physical injuries that have affected his musculoskeletal system. His medical records unequivocally document ongoing ailments to his cervical spine, lower back, and knees. Numerous medical procedures have been performed in these areas, such as orthopedic surgery and ongoing rehabilitation treatment. Although it has been seen that the body's reaction to the interventions is stable within reasonable bounds, issues could still arise if the level of movement intensity is higher than what is considered safe. While routine blood biochemistry data over the past 12 months indicated evidence of minor metabolic decline, they also demonstrated stability in endocrine and immunological indices. Monitoring of heart rate and blood pressure did not show elevated cardiovascular risk. Rather, variations in bone density and serum iron levels suggested a lower than normal load-bearing capacity. Utilizing specialist medical technology and operating under the idea of continuous monitoring, the resident medical staff maintained the entire index system under careful supervision, and health record updates every day. Authentic documentation demonstrate that Ozzy Osbourne himself decided against moving to a critical care unit and instead to continue treatment on site. Alongside this decision was a plan to deploy interdisciplinary medical experts, arrange mobile medical equipment, and create an on-site care pathway with backup measures. The logistics and medical engineering team's autonomy, access to medical orders, and responsibility distribution are all spelled out in detail in the planning documents. Additionally, Ozzy Osbourne has taken action to address his abrupt loss of mobility as part of his long-term health strategy. In particular, a static motion rehabilitation frame, an automated nutrient infusion device, and a suitable toolkit for contactless operation of audio recording and editing equipment are among the mechanical assistive devices that he has pre-approved. Although access to specialist tools is ensured by the integration of these gadgets into a distinct environment, biological restrictions still apply. The complete medical record shows a strict, open, and legal monitoring mechanism. Although Ozzy Osbourne's physical health continues to deteriorate, his autonomy and capacity for personal decision-making have been preserved throughout the care coordination process. Not only does the medical paperwork serve as the basis for treatment decisions, but it also serves as the basis for retirement plan implementation, the transfer of creative assets, and the completion of the whole set of procedures to terminate his career. Heritage behind the scenes. When Ozzy Osbourne's personal legal status was transferred, the fully organized archive of ownership rights of use and guidelines for managing her cultural and creative legacy was finished and put into operation. This document functions as a traditional inheritance statement as well as a thorough post-production value orientation document that includes social, administrative, and artistic guidelines. The document's material is organized into 3 tiers. See personal documentary materials, musical heritage, and guidance on upholding the subject's cherished values. In the first group, all of the musical works in the catalog are grouped together based on the mode of exploitation and the content stage of formation. Every cluster has its own rules about the breadth of editing, licensing durations, and restrictions of usage for commercial reproduction or re-editing music compositions. A number of unpublished recordings, incomplete melodic sketches, and unfinished lyric drafts are listed in the system in addition to legally issued CDs. All of these materials are protected in their original form and are not available to the general public, with the exception of confidential use in specialized music study. According to the standards for managing musical heritage, a content curation group is to be appointed. This group serves as a technical review and content control body and has an autonomous role that is not influenced by commercial groups, ensuring the artistic quality and originality of any compositions that are reproduced or communicated is the group's goal. If content needs to be digitally reproduced or converted to a different format, the procedure must be followed in compliance with the ethical and technical guidelines outlined in the legal annex. The second category pertains to the personal records, which comprise independent art analyses by Ozzy Osbourne, handwritten manuscripts, strategic notes, and personal diaries. These resources are coded and digitized for storage in a controlled database for study and preservation reasons, and they are arranged in accordance with academic cataloging norms. Each item of material is listed in the grouping records along with its completion status, degree of confidentiality, as well as when future access will be possible. Some of the most valuable content has been designated for use in cultural archives, but no clear plans for its usage have been set. The ideological and behavioral criteria make up the last category. They are outlined in a core document with a distinct title. Ozzy Osbourne has outlined in this document how to uphold the cultural values that he believes form the cornerstone of his entire career. These values include the idea of integrity in content, a dedication to diversity in expression, and the complete separation of art from commercial objectives. Although it is a normative text of guidelines for heritage managers and organizations planning memorial events, this document does not contain any legally enforceable elements. To support the long-term operation of the aforementioned contents, the heritage system also creates an administrative and financial framework, in addition to the abstract values. A separate fund is created from accumulated earnings, creative shares, and intellectual property profits with the goal of supporting conservation publishing and academic publication initiatives pertaining to Ozzy Osbourne. An independent governance model was used to construct the fund's supervisory board, which is unaffiliated with any commercial arts organizations or media companies. Decisions on funding are transparent, made public, and founded on precise academic standards. Ozzy Osbourne's life story has been arranged, saved, and left behind as a concise synopsis, including everything from his mistakes to his last deliberate actions, not out of remorse, but for contemplation. In a field that frequently discards less glamorous elements, he made the proactive decision to end things in a systematic way on his own. Please share if this information gives you a better understanding of a character who was originally a symbol, then a warning, and finally a typical example of introspection in order to spread a more comprehensive viewpoint. If you have any comments, please click to indicate whether you believe this method of content creation is essential. Thank you for staying to the very end.